Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We start today's story with the simple act of kindness, letting a struggling friend crash at your place. But by the end, that friend was pointing at the furniture and calling dibs like she was shopping in IKEA. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I gave her a place to stay. She tried to move in permanently. I have a problem. I'm working on not being a doormat. I've been learning how to say no, stand my ground, and stop letting people walk all over me. It's been a process, but every once in a while, life gives me a situation that really tests just how far I've come. A while back, my ex-college roommate reached out to me. We hadn't been super close in years, but she told me she'd fallen on hard times and had just been kicked out of the apartment she shared with her cousin. She was desperate, she said, and needed a place to stay just for a couple weeks until she could get back on her feet. My partner and I felt bad for her. We told her she could stay with us, but we were very clear about the terms. We'd sold her house and were moving in 6 weeks. She absolutely had to find a place by then. She nodded, said she understood completely, and moved in with nothing but 2 suitcases. For the first couple of weeks, things were fine. But as our move date kept closer, we started reminding her every few days that she needed to be out before the movers came. She kept assuring us that she had a new place lined up, that she just needed a little more time to get it ready. Meanwhile, we started packing. Slowly, the house became a maze of boxes, and still she hadn't budged. When we asked her about her timeline, she would smile, say not to worry, and promise she'd be gone before moving day. Then came the day before the move. The truck was scheduled, the movers were booked, and she was still there. At that point, we told her firmly, "We are loading the truck tomorrow morning. The locks will be changed. You cannot stay here." She said, "Oh yeah, I'll be gone. My friend's coming to help me move my stuff tomorrow." She threw me for a loop. "Your stuff," I thought. "You showed up with 2 suitcases." But I was so relieved that she was finally leaving, I didn't question it. The next morning, her friend rolled up in a pickup truck. I watched from the doorway as she started walking him through the house, pointing at our bed, our dressers, our table, our television, even some kitchenware. Basically anything she wanted. "Whoa, what the hell are you doing?" I said, stepping outside. She looked at me like I was the crazy one. "I'm taking my furniture and some of my other stuff for my new place." I blinked at her. "Your furniture? None of this is yours. You came here with 2 suitcases. She crossed her arms. "You said you'd help me get back on my feet. Well, this is getting me on my feet." I told her absolutely not. She immediately got defensive and said she was going to call the police because I was stealing her things and refusing to let her take what's hers. I'd had enough. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pointing to the driveway. "You have exactly 2 minutes to get off my property before I call the police myself and have you arrested for trespassing and attempted theft." Her friend looked mortified. He grabbed her suitcases, shoved them into the truck bed, and practically dragged her into the passenger seat. They sped off without another word. I thought that was the end of it until 2 days later when I got an email from her. Attached was an invoice listing all the furniture, electronics, and household goods she claimed were hers and demanding that I pay her to replace them. I didn't even respond. I blocked her on everything and moved into my new place without a second thought. Looking back, I think this was one of those moments where I finally learned that being kind doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the kindest thing you can do for you. Yeah, your friend's what's called a con artist, aka scammer. She had that planned from the start. I'm sorry that your ex-friend tried to pull that on you. And our second story. Today's story takes us back to a high school landscaping project where a teacher and his students thought they knew better than the delivery driver. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. You want the soil dumped where? Okay, don't say I didn't warn you. Over 20 years ago, I worked for a landscaping supply company driving a single-axle dump truck. The trucks had a 26,000-pound gross weight, though we often overloaded them by a ton or so. One of our regular deliveries was to Mascota High School, usually mulch or topsoil. On this particular day, I was hauling 4 or 5 tons of topsoil. I drove around the school looking for the person listed on my delivery ticket. After asking around, I was directed to a math or physics teacher, someone STEM related, and eventually met him and a few students in front of the school. At the time, I was barely 20, still young looking, and I doubt I inspired much confidence in authority figures. The teacher told me to dump the dirt into a planter they were building around the school sign. The planter was 50 feet into the grass between the road and the parking lot. I started to object. The truck weighed 12,000 pounds empty. I knew the grass wouldn't just flatten, it would rut several inches deep and leave permanent tracks. But I didn't even get the words out. The teacher cut me off, speaking slowly and condescendingly. A couple of students joined in as if I couldn't understand instructions. Every attempt I made to explain was brushed aside with more helpful directions, complete with hand gestures like they were talking to a child. After a few failed tries, I gave up. So I drove onto the grass, leaving deep ruts that would haunt the groundskeepers for years. I backed up to one side of the planter and started dumping soil. Soon the dirt was mounded high on one side, spilling above the short decorative wall, while the opposite side was bare. I climbed down to suggest they'd want more dirt spread evenly, or that we could shovel some against the empty side before dumping the rest. Again, I wasn't allowed to finish a sentence. They waved me off, dismissive. Instead, they told me to dump the remaining soil, 2 or 3 tons, out in a nearby field behind the school. Here's what they didn't know. Topsoil doesn't spread evenly out of a dump truck. Trucks have chains on the gate to meter how fast material flows. That works with gravel, but not with soil. It clumps, jams the gate, and requires digging out. There was no way I could explain this nuance to people who hadn't let me complete a single thought. A student even gave me the slow, exaggerated instructions. Just drive while you dump it out, like he was talking to a toddler. By then, I was done caring. I had them sign the delivery slip and drove around to the field. I didn't want to make life harder for the farmers, so I did my best. I drove faster than I usually would in a tilled field and started raising the bed. As expected, nothing came out until the whole mass slid, landing in one giant pile. Anyone who knew soil and dump trucks would recognize it had been dumped on the move, but to an untrained eye, it was just a mound someone else would eventually have to deal with. About a week later, I passed the school on another delivery and couldn't resist checking. Sure enough, the tracks across the lawn were still obvious. The planter was only half filled, the exposed bricks of the block still showing. The huge pile of dirt sat untouched in the field. For years afterward, every time I drove by, the planter looked the same. Half finished, grass ruts still visible, nobody ever fixed it. Eventually, the entire complex was torn down and rebuilt, erasing the evidence. I've often thought back to that day. I wasn't going to fight with people who treated me like I was too dumb to understand basic instructions. They wanted dirt dumped in the grass and half a planter filled? Fine. They wanted a useless pile in a farmer's field? Sure. They refused to let me finish a sentence, so they got exactly what they asked for. That landscaping job lasted me 6 years, longer than it probably should have. I saw plenty of bizarre customers, like the time I accidentally disappointed a couple hoping for a delivery man 3-way. But that day at Mascota High School stands out as one of the worst. It wasn't just bad instructions, it was the mix of arrogance, condescension, and outright hostility. In the end, I did exactly what I was told, and the result was a ruined lawn, a half-filled planter, and a useless mountain of dirt rotting in a field. If you're paying someone to do something for you and they tell you how it could be better, for God's sake, listen to them. They know what they are on about even seeing it 1,000 times per week. And our last story. How I saved my property from a power-hungry HOA president. When I bought my house, I knew there was an HOA, but it was a small one, mostly responsible for landscaping at the entrance and keeping the pool clean. $150 a month, nothing crazy. I figured it was worth it for a nice, quiet neighborhood. Then last month, I got the letter. It was 3 pages long, written like some dystopian government decree. The gist? Effective immediately, the HOA was entitled to demand keys to every property. The board could enter any property at any time without notice whenever they determined it was necessary. If I didn't hand over my keys, I'd be fined $100 per month with a 10% monthly increase until it capped at $300 per month. Or, and here's the kicker, I could pay $3,000 a year for an exemption, which still allowed them to enter my house whenever they wanted, but supposedly let me retain control of my keys. I nearly spit out my coffee. I marched straight to the HOA office during business hours, letter in hand. The HOA president, let's call her Cheryl, greeted me with that fake smile customer service face. "Hi there," she said brightly. "Are you here to turn in your keys?" "Not exactly," I said, dropping the letter on her desk. "You want me to hand over my house keys to you?" "Yes," she said, nodding. "It's for emergencies. What if there's a leak and you're not home? This is for everyone's safety." I stared at her. "So let me get this straight. You want me to give you the keys to my home, let you walk in whenever you feel like it, and if I refuse, you'll fine me?" She blinked innocently. "That's what the bylaw says, yes. The board voted unanimously." "Then the board is out of its mind," I said flatly. "You have no right to demand access to my house. You're not my landlord. You're not law enforcement. You're a homeowners association, not a security agency." Her smile slipped. "Sir, if you refuse to comply, we will assess fines and place a lien on your property." "Go ahead," I said, turning to leave. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." And she did. My attorney nearly fell out of his chair laughing when I showed him the letter. "This is insane," he said. "They're violating basic property rights, state privacy laws, and possibly even criminal trespass statutes." So he drafted a beautiful, scathing cease and desist letter. It cited state statutes, case law, and my deeds covenants, which made no mention of granting the HOA any right of entry. It gave them 10 business days to revoke the bylaw and notify all homeowners in writing, or we'd file a lawsuit for declaratory judgment and damages. I wasn't the only one furious about this. I talked to a few neighbors, and it turned out half the street was outraged. Some were scared, but relieved to hear I was fighting it. A few even chipped in to help cover my legal fees. The deadline came and went with no response, so we filed suit. That's when the fireworks started. Suddenly, the HOA called an emergency board meeting. Cheryl tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. "We only meant this for maintenance emergencies," she said, waving her hands. "We would never enter without cause." My lawyer, who I brought with me, simply slid the lawsuit paperwork across the table. "If you revoke the bylaw now, we'll drop this. If not, we'll see you in court, where you will lose, and your association will pay my clients' legal fees on top of their own." You could have heard a pin drop. By the following week, every homeowner got a new letter. The bylaw had been rescinded after further review, effective immediately. No keys required, no fines, no $3,000 extortion fee. But that wasn't the end of it. Enough neighbors were fed up that they started a recall petition. Within a month, Cheryl and 2 other board members were voted out and replaced with people who actually understood what an HOA is supposed to do. That key policy wasn't just overreach, it was a straight-up power grab. Demanding access to every house, threatening fines, and tacking on a $3,000 exemption fee? That's not safety, that's extortion with a letterhead. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.